In the small, sunlit village of Lukoya, Amara and Nadia were more like sisters than friends. They had grown up together, sharing food, laughter, and secrets under the big acacia tree that stood in the middle of their village. People often said they were like two halves of one soul, where one went, the other followed. They fetched water together from the river, helped each other with chores, and spent long evenings talking about their dreams. Amara dreamed of one day having her own tailoring shop, while Nadia wished to travel and see the big cities beyond the hills. As the years passed, both girls grew into beautiful young women. Amara's smile was warm and kind, and she was loved by many in the village for her gentle nature. Nadia was lively and full of charm. People often gathered around her because she made everyone laugh. Though they were different, their friendship remained strong, or so it seemed. One day a new teacher arrived in Lukoya. His name was Jabari, a calm and thoughtful man who taught the village children to read and write. He often passed by Amara's tailoring hut and greeted her politely. At first their conversations were short and shy. But soon they began to talk every evening, about books, life and dreams. Jabari admired Amara's kindness, and she admired his wisdom and patience. Before long they fell in love. The news spread quickly through the village. Everyone celebrated, especially Nadia, who smiled and hugged her best friend. She helped Amara choose fabric for her wedding dress, picked flowers for decoration, and told everyone how happy she was for her. But at night, when she was alone, her smile faded. In her heart, Nadia felt a strange pain she could not explain. She remembered the days when she and Amara had dreamed together. She had always imagined that she would be the first to marry, that she would be the one admired and loved. Now it was Amara, quiet, gentle Amara, who was getting all the attention, all the joy, all the love. The thought made her chest feel tight. Still, Nadia tried to hide her feelings. When people praised Amara, she forced herself to smile. When Jabari came to visit, she greeted him kindly, even though something inside her felt heavy. She told herself it was only jealousy, and that she would soon get over it. But the feeling only grew stronger. As the wedding day drew near, the village was full of excitement. Amara worked on her own wedding dress, a soft white gown with golden beads stitched carefully by hand. Every bead shone like sunlight when she held it up. Nadia watched her sew, pretending to be happy, but her heart burned with quiet envy. One afternoon, as they sat under the acacia tree, Amara spoke with joy about her future. "Nadia," she said softly, "you have always been like a sister to me. I want you to stand beside me on my wedding day. You are my best friend." Those words should have warmed Nadia's heart, but instead they filled her with guilt and sadness. She wanted to be happy for Amara. Truly she did, but she couldn't stop the bitterness that had taken root inside her. It was as if her own dreams were slipping away while Amara's were coming true. The night before the wedding, Nadia couldn't sleep. She walked outside and looked at the moon hanging over the quiet village. Her thoughts were full of questions. Why did Amara get everything she had ever wanted? Why not her? She wished she could turn her heart off, stop feeling this way, but the jealousy wouldn't leave her. The next morning, Amara came to see her, her eyes shining with excitement. She looked beautiful even without makeup, her face glowing with happiness. "Nadia," she said, "today is the biggest day of my life. I wouldn't want to face it without you by my side." Nadia smiled, but it felt forced. She nodded and hugged Amara, hiding the tears that had gathered in her eyes. Her mind was full of confusion. Part of her wanted to hold Amara close and never let go, but another part wanted her friend's happiness to disappear. All through the morning, the village buzzed with music and laughter. Children danced, women cooked, and the air smelled of roasted maize and fresh flowers. Amara's dress hung near the window, catching the light like a piece of magic. She looked out at the crowd and felt her heart fill with joy. Meanwhile, Nadia stood near the door watching her friend. Every smile, every kind word Amara received, felt like a small sting in her heart. She had never felt so invisible. As Amara walked down the path to the ceremony, the villagers clapped and sang. Jabari waited for her near the old mango tree, his face full of love. Nadia followed behind, her steps slow and uncertain. She wanted to be happy, but all she could think about was the distance that had suddenly formed between them. Two friends who once shared everything, now walking in different worlds. When Amara reached Jabari and looked into his eyes, she felt that her life was finally beginning. But behind her, Nadia stood with tears in her eyes, whispering silently, "That should have been me." And though the sun shone brightly that day, Nadia's heart was full of shadows. The village saw only the beauty of the ceremony, the laughter, the music, the colors, but no one saw the quiet storm that was growing in Nadia's heart. Under the same acacia tree where they had once shared dreams, One heart was full of joy, and the other was slowly breaking. A few days before the wedding, the peaceful village of Lukoya began to whisper. People spoke softly in corners, their voices full of secrets. Something strange was happening, something that made hearts uneasy. They said that Jabari, the groom-to-be, had been seen with another woman. Some said she was from a nearby village, others claimed she was a trader who came every month to sell cloth. No one knew the full story, but everyone loved to talk. Amara first heard the rumor at the marketplace. She was buying flowers for the wedding when two women standing nearby began to whisper. "Poor girl," one of them said. "Imagine finding out your husband-to-be loves another." The other woman shook her head sadly. "I heard it's true. He's been meeting someone in secret." Amara froze. The flowers in her hands trembled. For a moment she thought they were talking about someone else. But then one of them looked straight at her with pity in her eyes. That was when Amara knew. They were talking about her. She felt her heart grow heavy as she walked home. Her mind was full of questions. Could it be true? Jabari had always been kind and honest. He had never given her a reason to doubt him. Still, the words wouldn't leave her head. That night she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard those whispers again. "He loves another." The next morning she met Jabari at the well. He smiled at her as always, but she couldn't smile back. "Jabari," she said softly, "people are talking. They say you are seeing another woman." Jabari's face changed. He looked shocked, then hurt. "Amara," he said gently, "you know me. I would never do such a thing. I love you and only you." His words were calm and honest, but Amara's heart was still unsure. Lies, once spoken, have a way of clouding the truth. Days passed and the rumors grew. Some villagers began to avoid Amara. Others whispered behind her back. Her once bright eyes lost their shine. The laughter that used to fill her house turned into silence. She started to believe that maybe happiness wasn't meant for her after all. Nadia, her best friend, was always there, or so it seemed. She came every day bringing food and pretending to comfort her. "People are jealous," Nadia said, holding Amara's hand. "They don't want you to be happy. Ignore them." But her voice sounded strange, too calm, too smooth. When Amara cried, Nadia looked away, hiding something behind her eyes. Inside her, guilt and jealousy fought like fire and wind. She had been the one who started the rumor. She had whispered it first, quietly, to a few women at the riverbank. She hadn't meant for it to spread so far. She only wanted to make Amara doubt herself, to make her feel small, just for a little while. But the lie grew bigger than she had imagined, like a spark that turned into a wildfire. Nadia told herself that Amara would be fine. "She is strong," she whispered. "She will forgive me." But every time she saw Amara's sad face, her chest grew tighter. She couldn't escape the guilt. Yet at the same time, she couldn't stop feeling that strange, cruel satisfaction. The kind that comes when someone else's light dims and yours feels brighter for a moment. 2 days before the wedding, Amara decided to find out the truth. She visited the woman people said Jabari loved. Her name was Lami, a young trader who sold fabric from her small cart. When Amara asked her about the rumors, Lami looked confused. "I don't know what you are talking about," she said. "I only come to sell cloth. I hardly speak to anyone here." That was when Amara realized something was wrong. Someone had created the story. Someone close to her. That night, she sat in her room, thinking. Her mind replayed the past weeks, the words, the glances, the small things she had missed. And suddenly, everything pointed to one person. Nadia had been there when the whispers began. Nadia had been the one who comforted her every day. Nadia had asked the most questions about Jabari and the rumors. The pieces fit together like a painful puzzle. When Amara finally went to see her friend, the moon was bright, and the village was quiet. Nadia was sitting outside her house, staring at the stars. She smiled when she saw Amara, but her smile faded quickly when she noticed the look on her friend's face. "Why, Nadia?" Amara asked, her voice trembling. "Why did you do this to me?" Nadia's lips parted, but no words came out. For a moment she looked like a frightened child. I didn't mean for it to go so far," she whispered. "I was jealous. Everyone loved you. You had everything, Jabari, happiness, respect. And I had nothing." Amara stood there in silence. Her heart broke, not just because of the lies but because her best friend, the one she had trusted with everything, was the one who had hurt her most. "I would have shared my happiness with you," Amara said softly. "You didn't have to take it away." Nadia began to cry, covering her face with her hands. "I'm sorry, Amara. I didn't think. I couldn't stand being in your shadow anymore." Amara looked at her for a long time. There were no more tears left in her eyes. Only sadness. "You were never in my shadow, Nadia," she said. "You were beside me. Always." With that, she turned and walked away. Her footsteps were slow but steady, leaving Nadia behind under the cold moonlight. The next morning, Amara called off the wedding. The village buzzed with questions, but she said nothing. Jabari tried to speak to her to explain, but she only said, "Some wounds are too deep for quick words." She packed her few belongings and left Lukoya quietly, without telling anyone where she was going. The villagers watched her go, whispering again, not out of gossip this time but out of regret. Even those who had believed the rumors now felt ashamed. As Amara walked down the dusty path out of the village, the sun rose behind her, painting the sky gold. She did not know what her future would hold, but she knew she would start again, somewhere far away where no one would whisper her name in pity. And in the village of Lukoya, Nadia lived with her guilt. Every time she passed under the acacia tree, she remembered her friend's laughter, her kindness, her trust. The same tree that had once been their place of joy now stood as a silent reminder of what jealousy had destroyed. After the wedding was cancelled, the village of Lukoya fell into a heavy silence. The songs that had been prepared for celebration were never sung. The drums that were meant to echo through the night stayed quiet. People spoke in low voices, careful not to mention Amara's name too loudly. Some felt sorry for her, others felt guilty for believing the lies. But Amara herself said nothing. She only packed her things and left before sunrise, her face calm but her eyes full of quiet pain. She walked along the dusty road until she reached a nearby town called Nabuta, where her aunt, Mama Sifa, lived. Her aunt was an old woman with kind eyes and a heart full of patience. When she opened the door and saw Amara standing there, tired and dusty, she didn't ask a single question. She simply said, "My child, come in. You will rest here." For many days Amara spoke very little. She helped her aunt with chores, fetched water, cooked simple meals and kept herself busy. But her silence was deep, like a river that ran far below the surface. At night, when everyone slept, she would sit by the window and look at the stars. They reminded her of the nights she and Nadia had once shared, laughing, dreaming and making promises under the same sky. Now that memory only brought her tears. She refused to cry. To keep her mind busy, Amara began to weave baskets. Her aunt had once taught her how to do it, and her hands remembered the movements easily. At first, she made small baskets for storing vegetables or carrying fruits. But soon her designs became more beautiful and detailed. She used bright strands of dyed grass, red, yellow, and green, and created patterns that told quiet stories of her heart. Each basket she made seemed to carry a piece of her silence. One day, a group of children from the neighborhood came to her aunt's house. They were curious about the colorful baskets. Amara smiled for the first time in many weeks and invited them to sit near her. She began to teach them how to weave, her fingers moving gently as she spoke in her soft voice. "Every thread," she told them, "is like a choice we make. If we pull too hard, it breaks. If we are too careless, it becomes loose. But if we weave with patience, it becomes strong and beautiful." The children listened closely, their small hands fumbling with the strands of grass. They liked her stories, simple tales about kindness, truth, and hope. Little by little, her days became brighter because of them. Their laughter filled the courtyard, and Amara began to feel a small light return to her heart. Still, when she was alone, her thoughts often went back to Lukoya. She wondered what had become of Nadia. Did her old friend regret what she had done? Did she miss her? Sometimes she imagined walking back into the village, meeting Nadia under the acacia tree and hearing her say, "I am sorry." But she also knew that some things, once broken, could never be the same again. One evening, as she worked on a large basket, Mama Sifa sat beside her. "My child," she said gently, "your hands are strong, but your heart is still carrying a heavy load. You cannot live in silence forever." Amara looked at her aunt with tired eyes. "I'm trying, Aunt. I'm trying to forget." Mama Sifa nodded slowly. "You don't need to forget. You only need to forgive, not for them but for yourself. A heart that carries pain cannot find peace." Amara didn't answer, but those words stayed with her. That night, she thought about forgiveness, what it meant and whether she was strong enough to do it. She had lost her friend, her love, and her trust. But maybe, just maybe, she could find herself again. Weeks turned into months. Amara's baskets became popular in Nabuta. People came from nearby villages to buy them. They said her work had a special touch, something peaceful and full of feeling. Some called her, the girl who weaves her heart into grass. Every time she sold one, she smiled quietly, grateful that her pain had turned into something beautiful. One day, a traveling merchant visited Mama Sifa's house. He saw the baskets and was amazed by their patterns. "Who made these?" he asked. "My niece," Mama Sifa said proudly. "Her name is Amara." The merchant nodded. "Her work has soul. I would like to take these to the city market. People will love them there." Amara hesitated. "The city?" she asked softly. "That's far." "Yes," the merchant replied, "but your baskets deserve to travel farther than you think." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She looked at her hands, hands that once trembled from heartbreak, now strong and steady. Maybe this was her new beginning. Maybe the world still had space for her dreams. The next morning she gave the merchant a few of her best baskets. "If people like them," she said with a small smile, "you can come back for more." The merchant nodded and left, promising to return. For the first time in a long while, Amara felt a sense of hope rise in her chest. It was small like the first flame of a candle, but it warmed her heart. As weeks passed, Amara continued to teach the children and weave her baskets. The laughter in the courtyard grew louder, and the silence inside her heart grew softer. She began to hum as she worked, quiet tunes she remembered from her childhood. Sometimes, when the wind blew gently through the village, she would close her eyes and imagine that it carried her pain away, far across the hills back to Lukoya, where it would finally rest beneath the acacia tree that had witnessed both her joy and her sorrow. Amara was no longer the same girl who had once cried over betrayal. She was stronger now, quieter, wiser, and full of a gentle kind of peace. Her aunt often said, "You can hear the strength in her silence." And truly, anyone who met Amara could feel it, that calm strength that comes only from surviving something painful and finding light again. Though her heart still carried small scars, Amara no longer lived in sadness. She had found a new rhythm to her life, one made of stories, laughter, and the soft rustle of woven grass. And so, even though the world had once taken her joy, it also gave her a new gift, the power to rebuild it in her own quiet way. Many years passed and time quietly changed everything. The pain that once filled Amara's heart slowly turned into peace. She no longer woke up thinking about betrayal or loss. Instead, her mornings began with the soft sound of birds outside her window and the gentle rustle of dry grass as she wove her baskets. Her hands had become skillful, her designs even more beautiful. People from faraway towns came to buy her work, and her name spread beyond Nabuta. Everyone who saw her basket said the same thing, that they carried a story. The patterns were full of life, shaped like paths that twisted and met again, like the journey of a heart that had learned both sorrow and strength. Amara never told them the meaning, but in her heart she knew each piece held a memory of her past, the love, the loss, and the forgiveness she was still learning. One morning a messenger from Lukoya arrived. He brought an invitation to the village fair, a celebration that happened every 5 years, where people came together to sell crafts, share songs, and honor their ancestors. Amara's aunt smiled when she read the letter. "You should go," Mama Sifa said. "It's time to see how far you've come." Amara hesitated. Lukoya was full of memories she had buried long ago. Memories of the acacia tree, the laughter she once shared with Nadia, and the wedding that never happened. But something in her heart told her it was time. Not to look back with pain, but to return as the woman she had become. And so, a week later, Amara packed her baskets and took the long journey home. As she walked through the familiar dusty paths, she noticed how the village had changed. New huts, new faces, and children playing where she once played as a girl. Yet the air still carried the same warm scent of earth and smoke. The acacia tree still stood tall in the center of the village, just as it always had. When she arrived at the fair, people gathered around her stall, admiring her baskets. "These are the most beautiful we have ever seen," one woman said. Another added, "Look at the patterns, they tell a story." Amara smiled softly and thanked them, her voice calm and kind. She was talking with a group of women when she suddenly felt someone's eyes on her. She turned and saw a familiar face standing at the edge of the crowd, older, thinner, but unmistakable. It was Nadia. For a moment time seemed to stop. The noise of the fair faded, and Amara could hear only her own heartbeat. Nadia stood frozen, holding a small woven mat in her hands. Her eyes were full of something Amara could not name, sadness, guilt, and maybe longing. Slowly Nadia walked closer. The crowd moved aside as if the wind itself made room for what was about to happen. When she finally stood before Amara, her voice trembled. "Amara," she said softly, "I didn't think I would ever see you again." Amara looked at her, taking in the face of the friend she once loved like a sister. The years had not been kind to Nadia. Her hair had started to gray, and her clothes were worn. There was no pride left in her eyes, only regret. "I heard about you," Nadia continued. "Everyone speaks of your baskets. They say your work has the touch of grace. You've built a beautiful life." Amara's smile was gentle, almost sad. "Life has a way of healing us when we stop fighting it," she said. Nadia looked down, her hands trembling. "I don't deserve your kindness. I ruined your happiness. I ruined our friendship. I have lived with that shame every day." The two women stood quietly for a moment. Around them, laughter and music filled the air, but it all felt far away. Finally, Amara spoke. "You were my friend once, Nadia. What you did hurt me deeply, but I've learned that carrying pain forever only makes it heavier. I don't hate you. I just learned to let time take care of what I couldn't change." Nadia's eyes filled with tears. "I don't expect forgiveness," she whispered. "I only wanted to tell you I'm sorry." Amara nodded slowly. "Some things are better left to time," she said softly. "It has already done its work." She placed one of her small baskets in Nadia's hands. "Take this," she said. "It's a gift. A reminder that even broken things can be made into something beautiful again." Nadia held the basket as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Her tears fell silently, landing on the woven grass. "Thank you, Amara," she said in a trembling voice. "You are kinder than I deserve." Amara smiled again, a calm and distant smile. "Kindness is not about who deserves it," she replied. "It's about who needs it." For a long moment they stood there, two women once bound by friendship, torn by jealousy, and now brought together again by time and forgiveness. Then Nadia slowly stepped back, leaving Amara at her stall. The crowd returned, voices rising with laughter and songs, but Amara felt a deep quiet inside her heart, the kind that comes after a long storm has passed. As the sun began to set, she packed up her baskets. The light turned golden, touching the acacia tree in the distance. She walked toward it, her steps slow and peaceful. The same tree that had once seen her joy and her pain now saw her peace. She sat beneath its shade, watching the children play. Their laughter filled the air, light and carefree. Amara smiled, remembering her own childhood, the days she and Nadia had once shared. She no longer felt anger when she thought of those times. Instead, she felt gratitude, for the lessons, for the strength, for the journey that had shaped her into who she was now. When the fair ended, people came to thank her for her work and her presence. "You bring calm wherever you go," one old woman said. Amara only smiled and replied, "Maybe it's because I've learned to listen to silence." That night, before leaving Lukoya, Amara stood once more under the acacia tree. The stars above shone brightly, the same ones she used to wish upon as a young girl. She whispered softly, "I am home." Then, with the moonlight guiding her path, she began her walk back to Nabuta, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The morning after the fair, the village of Lukoya was still full of stories about the woman who had returned after so many years. Everyone spoke of Amara, the girl who once lost everything but came back shining with peace and grace. Her baskets had sold faster than anyone's, but it wasn't her work that people remembered most. It was her kindness. That day, people said her grace was brighter than any jewel. She had spoken softly, smiled gently, and treated even those who had hurt her with warmth. The villagers couldn't stop talking about it. Some said she carried the blessing of the ancestors. Others whispered that her heart was stronger than iron. When Amara walked through the market that morning, people greeted her with respect. Children ran to her, curious and full of laughter. "Tell us a story, Mama Amara," they said. She smiled, sat under the big acacia tree, and began to speak in her calm, warm voice. "Once," she said, "there was a girl who believed that love was simple and friendship was forever. But life tested her heart. Someone she trusted deeply hurt her, and she thought she would never smile again. She walked through many dark days, thinking her heart would never heal. But one day she realized something, that pain can destroy you or teach you. And she chose to learn." The children listened quietly. A soft wind moved through the branches above, and a few leaves fell around her. Amara continued, "She learned that anger is heavy. It makes your steps slow and your nights long. But when she forgave, her heart became light again. She could smile without pretending. She could work without fear. She became free." One small girl raised her hand shyly. "Did the friend say sorry?" she asked. Amara smiled gently. "Yes," she said. But by the time she did, the girl had already forgiven her in her heart. You see, forgiveness is not for the one who hurt you. It is for you. It lets you live again. The children nodded, their eyes wide and thoughtful. Some of the older villagers who had gathered nearby also listened in silence. Even the ones who once gossiped about Amara now looked at her with admiration. An old man leaned on his walking stick and said softly, "You are wise, Amara. Many would have cursed their enemy, but you turned pain into peace." Amara looked at him and replied, "I learned that revenge is like fire. It burns everything, even the one who starts it. But forgiveness is like rain. It cools the heart and helps new things grow." That afternoon, people brought her gifts, fruits, cloth, and small tokens of gratitude. But Amara accepted them with humility. "I do not need riches," she said. "My peace is enough." As the sun began to set, she helped the village children carry her baskets to the cart. She was preparing to return to Nabuda, where her aunt waited for her. The children followed her, holding her hands and singing softly. "Mama Amara, teach us to forgive," they sang. Their voices rose like the evening wind, sweet and full of hope. Before she left, Amara stood once more under the acacia tree. The same place where she had once felt heartbreak now felt full of life. The sky above was golden and calm. She looked at the people gathered there, men, women, and children who now saw her not as a victim but as a teacher. She said softly, "Do not let pain make you bitter. Let it make you wise. If someone hurts you, let time and kindness do what anger never can. That is how the heart heals." Everyone nodded and some even wiped their eyes. Her words stayed with them long after she was gone. When Amara finally left Lukoya, the road was quiet and full of soft light. She walked slowly, her heart peaceful. She carried no hatred, no regrets, only calmness and gratitude. The wind brushed her face and she whispered a small prayer of thanks. Back in Nabuda, life continued gently. Amara spent her days weaving baskets and teaching young girls how to make them. But she didn't just teach them how to work with their hands, she taught them how to work with their hearts. She often said, "When you weave, do it with love. Every strand you touch carries a piece of your spirit. So make sure your heart is kind." The girls loved her stories. They called her Mama of Peace. Travelers came from other villages to meet her, to learn her craft and to hear her words. And each time someone asked how she became so calm after so much pain, she would smile and say, "Because I learned that forgiveness is stronger than anger." Years passed and the story of Amara spread far and wide. Parents told their children about the woman who turned betrayal into peace. The story became a lesson for generations, that true strength is not in revenge but in forgiveness. In Lukoya, under the same acacia tree, old people still gathered to tell her tale. They told it to children who had never met her, children who grew up believing that kindness could heal anything. "She was once like us," they said, "hurt and lost. But she chose peace and that made her great." Sometimes travelers from Nabuda would bring her new baskets, gifts from Amara. Each basket carried a message woven into its pattern, the symbol of two hands joined together, shaped like a heart. It became known as the mark of forgiveness. The people said her spirit lived in every thread, every curve of the grass, every story told by the firelight. They believed that as long as they remembered her words, the village would always have peace. And so, Amara's name became part of Lukoya's history, not as the girl who was betrayed but as the woman who forgave. Children grew up hearing her story, and whenever anger or hate filled their hearts, they remembered the woman who taught them that forgiveness brings healing. Her story was passed down again and again, whispered by mothers, sung by teachers, and told by elders under the acacia tree. And somewhere in Nabuda, Amara sat in her quiet home, weaving as the sun dipped behind the hills. Her heart was full of peace, her soul free. She no longer looked back. She simply smiled and let the wind carry her story to the world.